I always get a great question from organisations I work with and in the ProSci classes that I teach, and that is, how do we balance and how do we prioritise between numerous different people-dependent change projects? And it's the difference between doing change management for one project and doing it on an enterprise scale. And while one builds on the other, you've got to know how to do change management for one project before you can embed it as an organisational competency to do it for many or all, preferably people-dependent change programs. And so let's say we're doing project X, depends on adoption of the new way of working. So we've got to do change management in all the ways that I've described in other videos. But suddenly we've got 10, 20, 50 projects that depend on people changing how they work. And of course the key, as ProSci call it, is enterprise change management, but what that actually is, prioritising and balancing all of the activities required to help people through their ADKAR steps against all the programs. And to do that efficiently, change management really needs to be an organisational competency. It's the lens through which all people-dependent projects are prioritised, analysed and deployed. So take a simple example. We know the number one success factor for any people-dependent change programme is active and visible sponsorship. So that's a core role. So we're going to ask sponsors to undertake certain activities to help drive that change throughout the organisation. So now multiply that by 10, 20, 50 programmes, all of which depend on the sponsor undertaking certain activities, the ABCs of sponsorship. And very soon the sponsor's expected to spend, 150 hours a week just doing the ABCs for these 10, 20, 50, 100 programmes, which is impossible, of course. And so with enterprise change management, we're thinking about, well, what's the priority between all of those? Can other people sponsor them? Can we integrate some of the activities across the programme? And ultimately, how do we prioritise these? And the only people that can prioritise these are the sponsors. In other words, the people who made a promise that this investment would yield a business benefit. It's only they who can do that, and they do that by recognising that the return on investment for a people-dependent programme comes from speed of adoption, ultimate utilisation and proficiency, and that in turn depends on actions by them, actions by managers, and possibly actions by other extended roles. And it's only by realising that and prioritising which programmes to do when in a consistent manner that you're doing enterprise change management. And of course ProSci gives us tools to analyse the change management maturity of organisations starting from 0 and going up to 5. Level 5 organisations having the highest likelihood of success. And in level 5 organisations, change management is an organisational competency. It's something that is always done for a people-dependent change programme. It's a natural part of what the organisation does. And I saw an article this week in I think it was the Harvard Business Review, which said that change management is should be just a natural part of management, but it very often isn't. And that means we've got to encourage and help organisations to develop it into that organisational competency, because it's only when an organisation does that it can possibly hope to cope with and manage the increasing pace of change that's happening and that is required for organisational success. And so my what's in it for me thought for change management in terms of both individual projects and enterprise change management initiatives as well. It's good for individual projects, it's good for prioritising between projects. It may be, or it's likely to be, a new skill for leaders and managers in particular. And finally, if enough people in the organisation will do it, it can become an organisational competency. And when it does become an organisational competency, that's when you can properly manage change. Hope that helps.